Hey everyone, Mr. Macintosh here, and Apple today dropped a surprise update, macOS Sonoma 14.3.1. In this video, we're going to go over everything new with it, including new features and fixes, security updates, Safari updates, firmware, BridgeOS full installer, and IPSW information. Plus, we're going to go over OpenCore Legacy Patcher because we got to go over some very important items, including some issues with the Auto KDK download. We've also got the wrong KDK version sometimes being downloaded. We've got issues with a black screen after update if you get that, and if your auto root patcher is not kicking off after the update. So we've got plenty to talk about with that. Plus, we're going to go over a live demo on updating to 14.3.1 for OpenCore Legacy Patcher. We have 6 different demo machines that we're going to go over. We got a lot to cover. Let's jump in and get started. Along with the 14.3.1 update, Apple did not update macOS Ventura or macOS Monterey. The current release is 13.6.4 and 12.7.3. Apple updated Safari inside macOS Sonoma to 17.3.1, but did not release, as of this taping on February 8th, separate Safari updates for Sonoma for Monterey and Ventura, which they usually do when it includes security updates. Xcode is at 15.2 and that remains the same. On the iOS side, we've got 17.3.1 and iPadOS 17.3.1, but AudioOS for HomePod, tvOS did not get a release. They're still on 17.3, but watchOS did get an update for 10.3.1. Our demonstration Mac for the update today is a MacBook Pro 13-inch M1 2020. If we want to be able to update to the latest version, all we need to do is go into System Settings, and we should see the red number 1 under Software Update. We can click on that. We should see 14.3.1 right in here. If you don't, you can click Command R to refresh the Software Update window. You'll see it starts to spin again and check again for the update, and you can click on More Info to see the information about the update. The size is 1.2.1 for Apple Silicon Macs. That is the smallest update that you can possibly get because we're updating from 14.3. If you're updating from 14.2 or lower, it will be bigger because it includes all those fixes. For OpenCore Legacy Patcher devices, the update size is 13.37 gigabytes, and that is normal for unsupported Macs with OpenCore Legacy Patcher. So we'll click on Update Now and agree, and our password. And there it goes to start to download. Now we're going to keep on track on how long it takes to prepare the update and install the update. So we'll let this finish up here and then we'll check to see how long it takes to prepare and install, and we'll be right back after the update. Okay, we're back up after the 14.3.1 update. What is the build version? It is 23D60. There was no associated beta releases, so you don't have to worry about any different versions of that. And there was some talk about why this wasn't a rapid security response update. Apple has not released an RSR for macOS Sonoma yet. And here we are in the new year and only a couple of months away from WWDC. So I'm not sure what's going on with the rapid security updates. Apple's still planning on doing them, but so far we have not seen one for macOS Sonoma. How long did it take to install the 14.3.1 update? The size was small, 1.3 gigs, and it only took 4 minutes to prepare the update, even though it started out at 25 or 30 minutes. After it restarted, the installation only took 4 minutes, so a total installation time of 8 minutes, and that aligns with the smaller dot release security updates 14.2.1, 14.1.2, 7 minutes, 6 minutes, so right in line there. Apple did not update the firmware for 14.3.1. It is the same as 14.3 for Apple Silicon M1, M2, and M3. If you have an Intel Mac, the BridgeOS update firmware was not updated. It is the same as 14.3. Safari was updated for macOS Sonoma included 17.3.1. Apple also released a install assistant package for 14.3.1 if you wanted to be able to create a USB installer, and they also released a full IPSW Restore file to be able to use Apple Configurator 2 to restore your M1, M2, or M3 Mac. So now let's get into the nuts and bolts of what's going on. Why did Apple release the 14.3.1 update? And you're probably going to guess most likely security related. This is what they do when they release a update that's a surprise, a point smaller release like 0.1, 2, or 3. Well, in this case, that's not what happened this time around. There is 0 security fixes or CVEs that are addressed in this update. Let's take a closer look at the Apple Security Updates page. And it's the same for iOS 17.3.1 and iPadOS 17.3.1 and watchOS 10.3.1. When we go to the What's New in Updates for macOS page, it was updated. This update provides bug fixes for your Mac, including including text may unexpectedly duplicate or overlap when typing. There's definitely been some reports of this. So basically you'll be typing on your keyboard and whatever you were typing would just automatically duplicate or would overlap right when you're in a text field. And there's been some talk about where this was addressed, whether it was rich text or something that has to do with WebKit. Well, that was addressed here, and that could answer why the Safari update was updated to a later version. We also have another interesting update in the enterprise section of macOS Sonoma. Usually you don't see any enterprise updates for smaller dot releases. They usually hold those over for major releases like 14.3, 14.2, and you can see the history here. With 14.3.1, we've got encrypted mail messages can now be successfully decrypted using smart cards. Now, smart cards are usually used in enterprise for businesses, high security environments, and a lot of government agencies use smart cards. So it's a really nice option for those companies and businesses and government agencies to be able to read email messages with smart card encryption. There's another fix I wanted to talk about that happened about 1.5 or 2 weeks ago. When you go to About This Mac screen, and I usually bring this up when I talk about the firmware versions, and we can see that information here. You'll see the model of the Mac that you have, and then you'll see the model version like 13 or 16 inch, and then you'll see the year. What's interesting about this field here is that this is not programmed within the operating system. There's a call out to Apple's servers to identify this machine, and this was broken for a while, and I noticed it, but I wasn't sure what was going on. And this is working now. So if you go to About This Mac, the proper year will be listed now, and that's a nice fix. Now let's take a look at the Geekbench 6 benchmark scores. And again, we check this just to make sure that there isn't any big swings slower or quicker when we install the update. And on 14.3 on this machine, we had a 2392 for a single and an 8755 for a multi. And once we updated to 14.3.1, we had a 2401 and an 8742. So a little bit faster, but right on target. Now let's talk about OpenCore Legacy Patcher for your unsupported Macs from 2008 to 2017. Current version is still on 1.3.0. 1.4.0 is still in the works. There's no release date yet for that, but it does fix a lot of things. For example, it does fix the recovery partition trying to boot to recovery, and it fixes some of the KDK download issues. The first thing I wanted to talk about was the automatic KDK download for the Kernel Debug Kit that's supposed to happen when you start the update. So let's take a closer look at that. So the way the automatic KDK system is supposed to work is that if when you open up the system settings and then you click download update, the launch agent is supposed to recognize that, kick off, and attempt to download the latest version of the Kernel Debug Kit. And here's that launch daemon that's supposed to run to check for the Kernel Debug Kit and start to download it if you're downloading an update. If we take a look at that, all it's doing is keeping an eye on a file and seeing if it's updated. And that file is an automatic update. And that file is system volumes update update.plist. When that gets updated, it knows it's attempting to download a software update. So then it'll run this command, OpenCore Patcher prepare for update, to be able to download the Kernel Debug Kit. Now, if that does not run, you're not going to get the Kernel Debug Kit. Which Macs need the Kernel Debug Kit? I've got a list right here, and I'll always put this in the description on if your Mac needs a Kernel Debug Kit for drivers and associated pieces. If you have a Mac with dedicated Intel GPU or NVIDIA GPU, you usually do not need the Kernel Debug Kit. You only need the KDK if you have an AMD GPU. But you also need the KDK if you have a Mac with a USB 1.1 controller, and that's all Macs 2010 all the way down to 2008. So here's some examples. You got a 2012 Mac Mini with an Intel GPU, no KDK. 2013 MacBook Pro with a NVIDIA GPU, no. 2013 Mac Pro with an AMD GPU, yes. And a 2011 MacBook Pro with an AMD GPU, yes. So you're going to get that KDK. So this gives you an idea of whether you even need to look for the KDK or not. Now, if that KDK is not downloading, then and you might have a problem after. And that's exactly what happened with this 2010 MacBook 13-inch. This Mac, even though it does have a NVIDIA GPU, it has USB 1.1, so it needs some of the pieces from the Kernel Debug Kit. And the keyboard and mouse won't work for this model and older for 2010 and under if you don't have a USB 2.0 dongle or a 2008 Apple branded keyboard, because that's USB 2.0. The automatic patching system did not come up after the update either, so this machine was having a bunch of issues. That's what I'm talking about now, because I want to be able to help you get through these issues so you can fix your Mac. If we look in here, we don't have the latest KDK. We have the 14.3 and it's a beta version, and you can see the last date modified. Now that should work. You want to be able to use the latest KDK that's production. So how do we know? Let's take a look at the KDK page that the OpenCore Legacy Patcher team maintain. This is where the Kernel Debug Kits are downloaded directly from the OpenCore Legacy Patcher application. So Dortania KDK support package, and you can see the full GitHub address right here. We're on 14.3.1, but we see 14.4 here. That's only if you're on 14.4 beta. But what we need to find is we need to scroll down here to find the production version. And look at this. 14.3.1. Now that's kind of interesting to see a kernel debug kit for a smaller dot release, but here it is that it wasn't updated until 6 hours after 14.3.1 was dropped. If you tried to install the update between 12 noon and 6 o'clock p.m., you would be going back farther to the older kernel debug kit. Now keep in mind, usually as long as you're within the 14.3, even if you're on an older beta, it should be okay, but you still want to be as close as possible. I'm going to put out a new recommendation to check here first to see if there's a new, after 6 o'clock, if there's a new kernel debug kit, because if there is, you're going to want that compared to this older version or even the beta version. That's why I try to go over these things, and that's why I still recommend using Monterey or Ventura when we are talking about having a stable system. Now again, all these systems that I have are running Sonoma just fine, but you'll sometimes have these small hiccups, but I want you to be able to get past that, right? This is the DMG that we need for the 14.3.1. That 2010 is kind of in a little bit of a pickle right now because it has an older version of beta kernel debug kit. So we're going to right click on this, we're going to copy this link here, and then we're going to go back to that 2010 and we're going to download this version, and then we're going to kick off KDK installer to see if we can fix this machine, because you can see it's in bad shape. It doesn't have the latest KDK because that did not work before the update, and the automatic patcher to install the root patches did not come up after the update either. And you can see that we don't have a background, it's slow, but we're going to get it fixed right now. We're going to paste that address and we're going to manually download that kernel debug kit package. Go ahead, enter and allow. Now while this downloads is about 500 megabytes, and we're going to let this kernel debug kit download. So it's done downloading. We'll click on our downloads folder, and we're going to click the downloads folder, and we're going to mount that DMG. And now all we need to do is install, and it's going to create that folder right in there. Continue, and agree. Install, and our password. There it goes. Now it should create a folder inside the library developer KDK's folder. When this is done, we'll give it a second here. Okay, the install is done. We'll click on close. The 13.3.1 now has our folder, so it's ready to go. We can actually copy the kernel debug kit package right to the directory so we can stash it for next time. We just have to rename it. We'll type in our password. Okay, copy is done. Now to name it, we can follow that same pattern, KDK underscore 14.3.1 underscore 23D60. That'll be ready for next time if we need it. Now that that's done, the KDK is already staged and ready to go. We can open up the patcher and we can install the root patches, and it will grab the latest KDK right here. And this machine will be ready to go. Because you can see the state that it's in. We don't have Bluetooth, we don't need Wi-Fi. We knew that that was going to happen. And that's what the kernel debug does, and helps install all those pieces to get that working. So all we need to do now is click on install root patch. NVIDIA Tesla, modern wireless, and legacy 1.1 USB like we talked about before, and that's why it needs the KDK. We'll click on start root patching, and we'll run it as root, yes. KDK 14.3.1, KDK is skipping. It is already founded in KDKs because we already installed it, and now it's able to apply those KDKs to the root volume. Now, we could have skipped a step here, and we could have just put the package over here, and the patcher would have then installed the package and made this folder. But we saved a little time. We just installed it first, so as long as it finds that folder, it's ready to go. Now, after an update, it actually ruins some of the files in this folder. That's why the developer stashed this package there, because it reinstalls them and then the patcher uses them. Let's let this finish here, and then this system will be good to go. If the KDK system went okay and the root patcher didn't come up, that's what we're doing now as a secondary piece. If the automatic patcher doesn't come up and say after the update, hey, you need to install the root patches, not a problem. Just open up the application, click root patches, and then it's going to go through that process. And your kicker here is going to be the slowness of the system. You're going to have a white login window. You're going to have a white background because it can't load the wallpaper. So you're going to definitely tell that the system's in a state where it needs those root patches. That's going to be your initial that we need to do something additional if you don't see that pop-up message. This is almost done. We'll let this finish here. All right, we are ready to go. We'll click on reboot and we'll click restart. And this 2010 13-inch polycarbonated MacBook will be ready to roll on 14.3.1. All right, we are back up and running here. We've got everything. We've got our Wi-Fi, Bluetooth sound, our background, our wallpaper, our transparent dock. This machine is in perfect condition. If you were wondering how I was able to download that KDK, keep in mind the patcher can automatically download that piece at the time of boot as long as you're connected to Ethernet. Ethernet can still reach the internet, it can still pull that down, but I wanted to show you that if you needed to copy it from another Mac, if you don't have an Ethernet cord, you can just copy that over with a USB, bring it over and put that KDK in here and install it, and that's how you can fix that system. Basically, any way you can get that KDK over to that system will work. So that shows you the different scenarios that you can be in if A, KDK did not download, and if the automatic root patcher did not come up after the update, you can run it manually with OpenCore Legacy Patcher. Now let's go through the next issues with the black screen and the wrong KDK version being downloaded. Now let's talk about two more issues, the black screen after update and the Kernel Debug Kit wrong version being downloaded. First of all, if your machine installs the Sonoma update and it comes back up and it's a black screen or it's struggling, you can't log in, you hear the fans kicking in, it's okay to power that system down. Now, you're going to be more affected by that issue, that black screen issue, the older your system is. For example, if you have a 2015, 16, 17, you're not going to have that issue because the system's powerful enough to just be able to show the screen and log in past that and get those root patches downloaded. The machines that are going to struggle are, for example, that 2010 MacBook. One's going to struggle. Now, you can wait a little bit, like 5 or 10 minutes for that screen to come up and you can type in your password and log in, or you can just power down. Now, it's okay to power down in that state. When you come back up, you will be able to log in and be able to get those root patches installed. So that's what happens if you get that black screen and what you can do. Now, let's talk about the different version of Kernel Debug Kit being downloaded. Now, when we talked about that site, that's your main source of what version of Kernel Debug Kit you need. So when we already talked about that site, you're looking for the latest version that's showing the latest here is highlighted, and before the 6 hours after 14.3.1 came out later, 6 hours late, 14.3 was the main build, even though 14.3.1 is newer. So this is what should have been installed. The problem with this is it wasn't doing that. There's a problem with the patcher, and this is fixed in 1.4.0. It was downloading a previous version, 23D5051B, and you can tell that by looking at this right here. You can see when I started to update the system at 4:43 today, 14.3.1 KDK wasn't even out. And instead of downloading the correct version, 23D56, you can see that it was using 23D505, which is beta. That shouldn't be a problem because we're on that same 14.3 version, but there's no guarantee that there wasn't a small issue with a particular thing about it. There's 73 different hardware models. Not everyone uses the Kernel Debug Kit, but a large majority of them do. If there was a problem with that particular beta, you wouldn't know until maybe after. That's why I recommend just taking a look out here, seeing what version is available, waiting that 6 hours before you install, and see if another version of the KDK, like today, 6 hours late, 14.3.1 came out, so after that came out, then the patcher should download the right version. But in this particular case, this MacBook Pro 2011 is running 14.3.1 with a beta version of 14.3 KDK. If you wanted to update this system, I know, keep in mind, this system's running okay. So that's a perfect example of just because you got the older version, the system's still running okay. But if you wanted to get to the latest build, you can do that. And all you would need to do is go into the OpenCore Legacy Patcher application and then revert those root patches. But before you do that, download this latest version of KDK. So you could click on this, it would download that like we did earlier in the video, and then install it, and then revert those root patches. Click on post root, install root patch, and then revert. And then it'll reboot, and then it's ready to go. You can click on then start root patching. It'll pull that 14.3.1 KDK, and then you're set to go with the latest version. Now, I don't recommend you going through that whole process, especially if anything's working. But if something's not working, like a small thing's not working, you might need to go through this system. In a roundabout way, that is multiple troubleshooting steps here if you get into the situation. And that's what I wanted to explain through this whole process. If you have any questions about this, let me know in the comments, because I know this can be a little bit confusing. Now, let's talk about the 1.3.0 OpenCore Legacy Patcher and all of our 6 ported Macs. Our first machine is our 2017, and like we've mentioned in the past, this one's particular because we want to make sure that the Touch ID with the T1 security chip is working. So we can hold down our fingerprint and it is working a-okay. And we've got our touch bar working okay. The Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, sound, everything's working great on this 2017 15-inch MacBook Pro. Next up is our mid-2014 15-inch Retina MacBook Pro. We picked this one because it's got a Kepler-based GPU and does not require the Kernel Debug Kit. It does give you some different messages when you go through the root patching, and that's why I like to call these ones out. For example, this system extension updated. If you see this in your Kepler installation, that's totally fine. Just click on OK, and everything's working great on this system. No problems whatsoever. The only problems that the non-KDK systems could have is in library extensions if this folder doesn't get cleared out properly before it starts the root patching. If you see these in here now, that's totally fine, but you can see these were put in here exactly the date that I put the root patches, and you can verify that by clicking on post root patches, and it'll show you the exact date, February 8th, so this is right on target. And that's the Retina 2014 MacBook Pro a-okay. Next up is our favorite system, our late 2013 Mac Pro. And look at that KDK folder. We got our 14.3.1 because this was the last system that I updated. And we can take a look at that by just the date. Today at 12:39 a.m. when we finished this particular update, and that's why I've got the latest KDK. So everything went really well on this installation, no problems whatsoever. I heard you loud and clear on that last video. We talked about caching server, and we can see that with these 6 systems, we served 53.98 gigabytes directly from the cache of this Mac Pro caching server. Instead of downloading over the internet 53 gigabytes worth of updates, we served it super fast over the local network. And if you're connected to Ethernet, it was serving these updates at about 125 megabytes a second, and that 13 gigabytes downloaded in under 5 minutes on some of these systems. Worked out really well, and again, I heard you loud and clear. You want to hear more about that, and I plan on getting a video together to show you how to put together a simple caching server at your home. Next up is our late 2012 Mac Mini. I picked this system because it has an Intel integrated GPU only, and it does not require the Kernel Debug Kit. This installation went a-okay, no problem whatsoever. We've got our Wi-Fi, we've got our Bluetooth, transparent dock, working background, everything's working a-okay on 14.3.1 on this Mac Mini. Up next is our 17-inch late 2011 MacBook Pro. Now this is one of the ones I was talking about as my example, and I wanted to show you that log where we had the problem with the wrong KDK version. Remember, all the OpenCore Patcher logs are stored in user shared, and we can take a look at that particular log where it was problematic from today. We can highlight that and show you right in here what the problem was. And there's our problem right here. So it says that there's no direct match for 23D60, which is correct. But instead of falling back to the beta version, it should have fell back to the production version of 14.3. Again, I mentioned this to Makola, and he said that he was already looking at it and the team was looking at this to fix this for 1.4.0. So we should not have to wait too much longer on this. And again, it wasn't world ending because we showed right here that that beta version did install and work okay. I just wanted to point that out, that that was an issue, especially with this particular 2011 MacBook Pro. But after that, no problem. We've got our Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and everything's working great on this 2011 MacBook Pro, even with the beta version of 14.3 KDK. And last but not least, our 13-inch 2010 polycarbonate MacBook. Now, we use this as an example of all those problems that happened, but that's why I wanted to highlight so many different models in this video, because all the other ones were working great, and this one had different problems. Now, they weren't non-booting problems, and we were able to work through them, but I wanted you to see those issues and how we solved them live. So this particular model did not get the KDK automatic system pulling down the KDK, and after the update, the root patches automatic system did not kick off, but we fixed those. Once those were fixed, this system is running great with no issues. Let me know if there's a particular model that we've been seeing issues. I've been hearing some issues with some iMacs. I'm working with multiple Patreon members right now that are having some issues on iMacs right now, so maybe I should add an iMac to the fold for testing, and maybe even a 2010 5.1 Mac Pro. Do I recommend installing the 14.3.1 update? No, I don't. Unless you are constantly getting the repeating text issue and it bothers you so much. And that's why I talk about this recommendation, because it's not always a yes, you should install this update. When we install the update, we can see all the levels, especially on unsupported Macs, that you can go through when you install a system update. It doesn't just install 3 files. It's 1 gigabyte because it still replaces a ton of files in your system, and things can still go wrong, especially with no security related fixes in this update. And again, that's why I don't recommend installing it. But in case you want to install it anyway and you want to be up to date, and that's why we went through the entire board installing this update from an M1 Mac all the way back to a 14-year-old polycarbonate 2010 Mac. And that's important because we don't want to waste time. We don't want to possibly break a system if we don't have to, if the update's not important. Let me know, have you updated to Sonoma? Are you holding off? Are you still on Ventura or Monterey, even Big Sur? Let me know. I'm really curious where you're feeling here, because I gotta be honest, I'm thinking that Sonoma, for supported devices anyway, is right in about a point here when we're almost at 14.4, where I think it's about safe to be able to install on supported devices. Now, that's not to say that I don't recommend installing it on unsupported devices, but we just saw right here, there's definitely some bumps in the road. But with enough knowledge, we showed right here that we can get those issues fixed up right away, and once those issues are fixed, Sonoma is working great on these old Macs. Again, I hope this video was informative to you, and let me know in the comments if you have any questions, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks.